All right, Zig coming in on the top 10 show. We have Noor Al Rassam, artist and author of Moonflower. Moonflower is a graphic novel. It's a Middle Eastern dark fantasy. The art's amazing. The story's captivating. Only one chapter's out if you were at the at Noor's release at Negative Space. So Noor's a friend of mine from Negative Space Art Gallery in Cleveland, Ohio. Negative Space is a nonprofit art gallery. I've been working there for quite some time. You guys on this podcast have heard me talk about Negative Space for a very long time. And for those who have been with me the whole time, this basically started off just to support events at Negative Space. So if you're not familiar, Negative Space Art Gallery, Superior and 38th above an Asian Market. The goal of Negative Space has always been to give new artists a platform, walls to hang their pieces on, and a stage to perform on. It's been an honor to be working with them for as long as I have. And so there's a lot of great things that happen. Every third Friday we have a music showcase, and every last Saturday is an open mic, and every third Thursday there's sketch night, and so on. But anywho, so I met Noor there, and I've been working on a comic. Right, and I was telling Gotti about it. Gotti is the founder of Negative Space, and when you walk in there, the wood burnt art is what you see first, and that's kind of what's kind of encapsulated everybody to return, as well as Gotti's personality. And Gotti was saying I should talk to Noor, and so we kind of hit it off, and I went and supported her comic release. So there's a pre-release with physical copies. Noor's in October going to put out the Flower Child on Webtoons and is now taking pre-orders off Instagram. So if you hear the conversation and you're into it, if you go to Noor's Instagram, everything's linked below. You can make a pre-order, and I highly recommend you do. Also, if you're coming through Ohio, if you're from Ohio, I recommend you come to Negative Space. It's a very special place, and I guarantee you'll have a good time. Lastly, if you can rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, any of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests like Noor and share an insight with you. So without further ado, this is my conversation with Noor. I guess my first question is when did the comic or graphic novel medium kind of speak to you? Do you remember any graphic novels or comics that really kind of drew you in?
Yeah. Ever since I was a kid, I was really heavy into reading comics, specifically manga. I read a lot of manga back when I was in middle school, and before that, I was watching a lot of anime. And specifically, the graphic novels and manga that really spoke to me, I really enjoyed reading the books by Alan Moore. I really enjoyed reading manga such as, actually the first manga I've ever read was Naruto.
Nice.
Believe it or not, it was Naruto that really inspired me. I was 10 years old when it came out on TV. So at the time, I don't know, it was this innate feeling that this is what I've always wanted to do. And even prior to that, I've been drawing since I was a child. We didn't really have the vast amount of knowledge that we do now, such as the drawing tutorials. So I mainly learned how to draw from medical anatomy books, art books from middle school. I drew a lot as a kid.
Whoa.
I drew a lot from the manga that I read, and it's to the point where I used to get in trouble in class for drawing and not focusing on the lessons.
So it's interesting, at that early of an age to be diving into was it Grey's Anatomy or one of those medical books that sketch from?
Yeah, just medical books. Just would go to the library, pick up one, and that's kind of how I drew the human body.
That's that's really intuitive at that, especially how you pointed out there was no videos on how to do it. I think because I grew up reading manga and watching a ton of anime as well, and I think it's in at that how manga and especially Naruto or Dragon Ball, they really make everything kind of shapes, more clearly shapes than some other art forms. You know what I mean? It's
True.
very
Yeah,
square.
they work with a lot of shapes, a lot of gesture, and they stick to a style. They stick to a look throughout.
Right. Where some kind of I don't know, American comics are just comic runs in general, like they switch artists, and it's kind of hard. Like the characters all look the same, but it'll be different styles. So I think that's but I think that's really intuitive to like dive into like study and form like that. Did someone kind of like direct you in that way, or is that just a way you just?
I was like in elementary school. I was just looking through a lot of books in the library, and I just thought maybe I should draw people from here, and that's kind of where where it all started. I drew animals too. I loved animal books, like books about like the life of cats, the life of a frog, and the whole life cycle. And I would just draw everything from there, do little booklets. Yeah, I was a curious kid. I drew what I see a lot too, just things from my backyard. I
And
was always drawing.
was a like, did you get like a sense of like I can do this, like to fuel? Because like just to keep doing it, there's kind of like, oh, I can do this better. You know what I mean? Like, which I think is something you like. I think it's something that people develop later. Like, oh, I can get better if I keep practicing this. But as a kid, you just kind of like, was there a sense of I'm good at this?
Honestly, I just really enjoyed drawing it. I didn't really think about the process much as a child. It was just something that I really enjoyed doing. I guess when it's one of those things when you get older, you start becoming a little more critical. Like, oh, I could get better at this, or maybe I should draw it this way, or take lessons from this subject. So as we get older, we do tend to criticize our work. But I guess that's one of those things where as a child, you just see things as they are. And that's like the beauty of it. You don't overthink it. You just do it
Yeah.
because it's fun.
Well, yeah, and I agree. I think the things that we stick to and that we get more critical of is like it is fun. Need an excuse for why I do this. I got to be good at this, right? like
Yeah.
like well, that's awesome. Like that's so cool. Like just to find it and embrace it and keep doing it. And like so going throughout like high school, were you still drawing? Was this all like kind of consuming?
Yeah. It's a burning passion of mine. I was drawing even throughout high school. Actually, in high school is when I started taking AP art classes. And that's when I started learning more about like the fundamentals, like when it comes to drawing form, shadow, perspective, composition.
And did that kind of did that make sense from, I guess, unbeknownst years of practicing it, you know?
It definitely helped a lot.
Yeah.
It does. Learning the fundamentals will take you a long way as an artist, even as a beginner. It's super important. And you don't even have to be 100% perfect on all of them. You just stick to the ones that you enjoy doing. Like, for example, me, I like working with shadow and form. And I also enjoy composition. One of the things I really like doing is looking at paintings from like museums and just try to point out the composition. Like this one is, for example, let's say I'm looking at one painting and I see a star composition. It draws the eyes. It draws the eyes to like the painting, and you just follow like the message, like where it's going.
And does that make it in like a star shape? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
there's so many different compositions. There's the star shape, there's the spiral. I loved learning about all that back in high school.
I can relate to that because like I in high school that's when I started like really study music theory on my own. Like I would just do like, cause I didn't. There was a class, but it was more like music theory class I had in my school was more like uh people that are kind of in the music that I don't. It didn't really like. It wasn't like a real theory class. They didn't really talk about too much. It was kind of like, okay, now you're gonna compose something. It's like, what? I don't even know how any of the stuffs. But I studied on my own out of like this college workbook, and like kind of seeing how certain things made sense that way. Really like it was a fun exercise of something you've been doing for a while, and like kind of putting like direction towards this thing you enjoy.
Right. Yeah. It's just one of those things where like when you learn about it, you're like, oh, that's why the masters did it this way. Okay, that makes sense. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like looking at it from a totally different perspective.
Did you go to college for art after high school, or did you
I tried to back when I was living near Boston. I did try to go to school for it, but life happened. There was a point where I wasn't drawing for like 4 years straight because I had to work. So I never really went to college for it.
I should have asked where so you grew up in Boston?
Actually, I grew up in Solon, Ohio, and then
Okay.
I moved out to Boston.
Okay. But in
Through,
was that
yeah,
high school that you moved out to Boston, or was that after high school?
after high school.
Okay. And that was that just you or your whole family?
Oh, just me.
Okay, okay. So was the intention for a school out in Boston?
It was for to go to the Boston School of Art, and just life happened. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had to put art aside and focus more on work, paying the bills. And it's crazy because it wasn't until COVID that I rediscovered myself and went back to doing what I love to do.
Okay. A couple, I guess, a couple Boston questions because, like, I've spent some time out in Boston, but not a lot. I guess as far as like did you find yourself like kind of engaging in the art scene for in like in
Yeah.
Ohio and then in Boston?
In Ohio, not so much. I was just more so focused on school. And I was in a little like art community in my high school, just a little like art club. And when I moved out to the Boston area, again, there was a point where I wasn't really focusing on art until around COVID that is when I met Nayana Lafond, my mentor. And she's a art activist and painter. And I was her apprentice and personal assistant. So I did a lot of volunteer work in the art community in regards to the Missing and Murdered Indigenous People Project. And that's when I started dipping my toe back into the art realm around the Boston area.
That's so cool. So I guess how did you meet her?
It was through a friend.
Through a friend? Okay.
Yeah, through a friend.
So with her activism, can you explain that a little more?
With her activism, Nayana was part of the Missing and Murdered Indigenous People Project, and she made paintings of either Native activists, people who are missing, people who are murdered, and it's to spread awareness of this unfortunate situation that's been going on in the United States, where there are these Native people that are just going missing. I could go into a deep dive about this,
That's like that's
but
in
that's like it's a topic that's yeah,
that's intense.
yeah. But I learned a lot from her. I did. I learned a lot from my mentor. She is an amazing and powerful woman, a strong woman, and she used her she used her gift to give people a voice that was taken away. And it was extremely inspiring for me.
How could you not be around that and not be like inspired? That's an incredible chance and like circumstance to kind of reinvigorate your passion and like to have like someone who's doing that not only is inspiring of work, but just showing that art can be more than just something you like to do. How it can directly represent and like help other people.
Absolutely.
So okay, well, so in can you kind of so during this whole process as you're like as you're volunteering time and being mentored by her um like I guess what how did you find yours like as far as your own passion brought back up? Was it developing some of the characters in Moonflower? Was this or was it just the act of drawing?
It was more so seeing how my mentor would paint in such a difficult, unfortunate situation. She also dealt with some health issues, and just seeing her drive to keep going, it motivated me heavily to just keep going in my art. And there are a lot of themes in my story that I like to explore, such as war, conflict, tragedies, that I guess never thought of it that way. Maybe some of it did come from my involvement with Nayana. The main character, Isla, is a warrior woman, and she fights these malevolent fire spirits called Jinn to protect people. So maybe from a subconscious view, I was so inspired that it bled on into my characters. But the concept of Moonflower I've thought about for 7 years. It was before I met Nayana, actually. It was around 2017 that is when I started having ideas of maybe I should make my own story. If I love anime and comics so much, maybe I should do my own thing. It's always been like a passion of mine, a dream of mine to do my own story since I was a kid.
Was it when it's like when you start off with like manga and anime, it's hard not to like kind of craft your own. Like I remember wanting to do that as a kid too, but like nowhere near as like focused as like what you've accomplished here. So what, I guess, like with this initial, was there inspiration from other like comics and such aside from like mythology?
Well, I was growing up, one of my favorite movies to watch was Studio Ghibli films by Hayao Miyazaki, films such as Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, Castle in the Sky, Princess Mononoke especially. And I really loved how those movies, they're so beautiful, especially the background art. And I also appreciated how they explored pacifism and themes of like war. So I would say I'm inspired by Studio Ghibli films. I was also inspired by the mangaka Kentaro Miura, who created Berserk, along with horror artist and mangaka Junji Ito. I also played a lot of video games growing up, and sometimes I'll even draw like some of the concept art they have in video games, like just for good practice. I'm inspired also like by movies from Quentin Tarantino films.
Yeah.
My inspiration honestly comes from like everywhere. I'm all over the place.
No, that's the way to do it. That's what makes uniquely your own, is taking all these different things that you're exposed to. What was I gonna say on Berserk's like a heavy one. I mean, I can after reading the first chapter you put out of Moonflower, like there's some definitely like brutal scenes, and like I can see that maybe that through line there after talking to you about that.
Yeah, Berserk's pretty dark.
Berserk is so dark. Oh my god.
It's definitely not for the faint of heart. But I was just, despite of it being so dark, Kentaro Miura was such a phenomenal artist. I mean, the guy was so ahead of his time. And his work, you could just keep staring at every single page that he draws, like the cross-hatching, the backgrounds. I mean, the way that he draws emotions, the way he drew the monsters, it's amazing. And Berserk inspired a lot of other works that I was also interested in, such as the video game Devil May Cry, Elden Ring. A lot of people bring up Elden Ring with Berserk. It's crazy. It's a manga that I don't recommend to like everyone because it's heavy. It's really dark.
Yeah.
But can't help but love the art. Well, it took them a long time to complete like a chapter. But it's just when you see the work, you're like, wow.
No, definitely. And with Berserk, I remember there's a few things I might be mixing up, but the one thing I know for sure that is like when I was like first starting to read manga is like, oh, this one's wrapped up in plastic. You can't open this. You know what I mean? Like
that's exactly how I found out about Berserk.
You're just like, why can't I just read this one? This one's it's got this dude with this crossbow in the front. Like, um, at least I'm thinking, if I remember that first few covers correctly of those small books. But anyway, so that was kind of like, I remember people telling me, like, I had friends like, oh yeah, it's about this and that, and I'm like, yeah, right, you're making that up. And like, it is about this and that. Like, holy, it's intense. But the other thing I remember hearing, and I might be mixing this up, is that with that mangaka, I can't remember his name, but when he first started, or when they got him on like digital stuff, digital art, they're like, oh, this is gonna speed him up so he can be done quicker. But instead, he would just zoom in to even the finer and smaller details.
Yeah, yeah, he did.
Is okay.
And then it took them longer time.
Yeah. Which is like so badass, and it's like, wow. The other thing, Devil May Cry. I think I saw you. Early before we started the conversation, there was these awful storms that were happening in Ohio, and I saw you post. You were doing a Devil May Cry challenge.
I am, yeah. Just a little art challenge for myself, and if other people want to get involved, I'm just drawing like each boss from the game, starting with the first game.
And you drew this wicked, cool-looking spider. Like, I've never played the game before, but it looked amazing.
Yeah, that's Phantom. He's like the first boss of the game, and you got to play the game. It's a classic. The first game, especially, is like this demon lava spider. I don't know what to describe it, but he's just this oversized arachnid. And you honestly, any normal person sees that and they would just start crying, especially if you have a spider phobia. And meanwhile, your character that you're playing, Dante, just trash talks him. It's hilarious. So it's a great game. And a lot of my inspiration also comes from that game. I have replayed it so many times I lost count. It's a comfort. It's like a comfort game of mine.
Yeah. Is it it's interesting. Like, I definitely find, especially with certain anime, like, I definitely have like a comfort anime that I return to. You know, I know Devil May Cry is a game, but you know what I mean? Like, but like, so I guess when did you come back to Ohio then from Boston?
Actually, just this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, just this year. I decided to move back in with my family to delve more into the art realm in Cleveland. And honestly, I just miss my folks.
Well, especially after like something crazy like the 2020, you know, after the like just how crazy did Boston get as far as like lockdown and such?
They were pretty strict with the lockdowns, actually.
Yeah.
It's funny because every time I went to go visit in Ohio, I felt that, I mean, maybe it was just the area I was in, but I didn't really see people wearing masks as often. I didn't really see people practicing social distancing as strictly. Businesses were kind of just whatever about it, except the big corporations like Walmart and, you know, major grocery stores. Some private businesses were just kind of whatever about it, and then some were really strict. Boston was very strict. Like, some businesses were closed, some had limited hours. Pretty much everybody wore masks. Some places you could not go in without having the vaccine card even.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that's definitely intense. Like, I mean, I thought Ohio was kind of intense, but no, compared to that, that's super intense. So, like, I guess, was it, so when you moved back, did you, now we met at Negative Space. Did you know anything about the Cleveland art scene coming here, or did you have some friends that were partaking or kind of suggesting, oh, it's popping here, come here?
Honestly, it was just my sisters that brought me to Negative Space.
Yeah?
And they knew Gotti, and they're like, hey, come look at this beautiful gallery. Look at his amazing work. And I was like, wow. I was so inspired by his work. And I didn't really have any, honestly, I didn't really have any art friends in Ohio or friends like in that scene. I didn't really know anybody.
Well, I mean, Now, until now.
Till now. I mean, yeah. But
Because
at that time, I didn't really know anyone.
so okay, so I mean, like, it's interesting because as far as like art galleries go, negative space is kind of a little hidden, like, oasis. It's not as like it's not the uh 38th Street. It's not. It doesn't stick out as like some of the other ones that get a little more traction. It's you got to kind of find it. So that's why, like, I mean, part of the reason I've been there is my band played there like once years ago, and I was like, I've been working there since for free, like for
Yeah.
8 years. But it's just like it's like this amazing little hidden thing, and it's so cool to bring people there and have everyone's minds like blown and inspired by just Gotti's work and whoever's there that month, and just like how cool the people are. So like to me, I think that's really interesting that negative space may have been one of the first places you got to like dive into as far as art in Ohio.
Yeah. Negative space is truly like a hidden gem. Really, it really is.
So with Kara and Chrysalis Studios, now I remember Kara was like saying that she just I mean, she's been part of the negative space family forever gallery, and like she just made her own space in one of the open like resident galleries in there, and then started this whole other space across the hall. How did you guys meet, and like how did you end up getting a space with her? A resident, like a studio space, I should say, for people listening that don't know what I'm talking about.
When I came in to Negative Space to schedule for my first art show, Gotti referred me to Kara, and said that she was renting out spaces for artists and asked if I would be interested in having my own little studio space, which is really convenient considering I just moved back home. um, that's pretty much how it happened. That's how
Okay,
I met everyone. Yeah.
gotcha. Very cool. So I guess from 7 years of kind of thinking about the concept of Moonflower, to moving back to Ohio, to being re-inspired, moving back to Ohio, having your own space to kind of do this work, and kind of finding yourself in, like, I mean, the people that come in negative space are inspiring and sometimes out there. So like being surrounded by a kind of a artist group, did that like really like kind of like how much of like what this first chapter in Moonflower, how much of that was from moving back to Ohio, or was most of that like previous?
In regards to writing, like the
Writing or
story itself,
drawing?
yeah, so in regards to writing Moonflower, I had the first, I want to say 24 chapters already pre-written. So the concept of chapter one was already storyboarded, already written. There were some things that I definitely went off script with. That's just part of the process. And moving back home, I just went straight to paneling and inking, working on the dialogue. I had everything pretty much all set before I moved back, thankfully.
Okay. So like cuz like diving into like this first chapter here, like I get, so from just to kind of like understand for myself, like from a written script, right? Does paneling to you, as it's being written, can you see it mostly paneled out, like storyboarded or paneled out in that sense? Or is it kind of a working draft until it's like sketched and inked?
So the way that I usually go about doing it is that I would do a very rough storyboard of what I want to happen, play like frame by frame, play by play. And from there, I move on to the computer and I think of a script and I write just a script for the dialogue. Then I go back to the storyboard and redraw it again until I have it look the way I want it to look. like as clear as I can. And that's when I transfer everything over to the iPad and start finalizing like refined sketches, and then to paneling and inking.
So like, I kind of and kind of haven't already talked about this a little bit. Can you tell me some of the I guess can you tell me how the X-Men have influenced Moonflower?
X-Men doesn't really have that much of an influence on Moonflower, but I do love X-Men. I would say one of my favorite X-Men's was X-23. Yeah, X-23 was my favorite.
Sick.
And I love Laura Kinney's story. I actually have the deluxe edition of like all her comics from like, I think it's like her first run. And it was just the way that she fought was pretty cool. And I guess some of it I was inspired by in regards to like Moonflower. I'm trying to think of how to word this without spoiling anything. It's kind of a
fair.
Yeah. I guess I would say maybe Isla's inspired a little bit by the X-Men X-23, and I would probably say Kitty Pryde in there. Kitty Pryde has the power of Shadowcat. She has the power of intangibility. So probably those two. But when I was creating the concept of Isla, I was just thinking to myself, it's kind of a messed up thought, but I was just like, what would it be like for someone that could just phase through things? And well, this was the first concept that I have of her. It's a bit different now, but at the time I was thinking, what would it be like for someone who could phase through things and don't have control over it? And I imagine somebody with those powers would probably scare people into thinking that's a ghost or that's a demon. So it was a concept I was exploring like 7 years ago.
That's a weird, like, what a weird, like, if that was you, is what I'm saying. What a weird thing to like kind of, but in a way, like, to phase through different things. Like I can think of a couple people in my life that do that, like, like emotionally, like,
right,
phase through stuff. So like, that's a really like, I don't know, that's a really deep thought, and it's kind of like, I guess that's the beauty of like manga and like superheroes and just like the kind of like the, I guess, oversaturated capabilities of certain people, and like it kind of comes down to like some type of emotional or mindset level to analyze it in a way, and like that's a really interesting, I guess, it's a really interesting thought experiment for someone to have to go through. Because one thing I really liked about how you set up this first chapter is like you get a brief intro to this character, a scenario, right? And then this kind of like, at the end of it, you kind of get this like self-reflection thing. And I don't want to spoil it, but you know what I mean? Like you get this character, you get to see like a full range of a character in a very like short span of this first chapter, which is like kind of hook and sinker what you need to do for a lot of like, I feel like for any of the like the kind of comic medium is to have like that kind of right in there. And I think you really do a good job with it in this first chapter. But I guess that comes from like 7 years of thought experiments like that.
Thank you. In regards to this concept, there's like an underlying theme into it that I'm trying to push throughout the whole story, which is, without spoiling anything, I'm trying to explore the theme of identity and ego and how we shape who we are based on things such as our name, where we grew up, parents, social life, trauma, the choices we've made, mistakes that we've made, memories, how attached we can be to our sense of self. And in this story, I want to explore what it's like to lose your sense of self, rediscover yourself. We're going to explore things such as emotions, such as guilt. And the goal of it is to be able to show people that you can forgive yourself and redeem yourself. And in regards to the concept of phasing, it's hard to say without spoiling anything, but I want to be able to. I guess it's one of those things where I want to be able to reveal what it's like to be seen, like in your own state of being, like what it's like to be seen, and being able to embody that. I don't know if I'm explaining myself correctly.
No.
Yeah.
I follow you. I think that's really profound. And like, I think like it's really interesting kind of hearing a little bit of your artistic journey with coming from kind of a mentor who kind of was doing that for people that didn't get the chance to do that. And like, it's really cool that like, and maybe this is just like me putting two things together and it has nothing to do with your original intent, but I think it's really cool that like in your own way you're kind of exploring that thought and that headspace of that, where you got to study with someone who was like trying to do that for people that were horribly murdered and just disappeared and shit.
Yes.
I think that's really and like, and the like, I guess maybe in a way like kind of prove your own person with your as an artist in that sense is really like profound. It's a heavy read, Nor. for as little as is out at the moment. One other question I had was with Jinn. Like, I tried to like before talking with you, I was watching a couple of videos on like the mythology and of Arabic jinn, and like just how like they can be fog. They're like kind of these monsters that would make sandstorms and such. Like, can you
Yeah.
like explain?
Yeah, I've done a huge deep dive in research on the jinn, from reading books about them to stories that my family would share. It's crazy because there's actually not a lot about them. They're actually pretty, they're mysterious. And given the information that I've read, there are jinn that are either good or bad. There are jinn that have the ability to shapeshift, to look like animals, to look like us, to trick us. There are jinn that have, like you mentioned, these like sandstorm abilities. There are jinn that have elemental powers, such as fire and manipulating the wind. They can shapeshift. They can be invisible. They're usually invisible to the human eye. And there's some theories that I've read on why that could be the case. When it comes to Moonflower, I've pretty much gathered as much information I can and then made up my own little lore of it based on that information. For Moonflower, I made it where they're walking on a different reality than us, and they could just spawn in front of that reality in and out. Like, they could just be invisible in one moment and then come right into our reality, and suddenly they're visible in that moment. They're mysterious. There's a lot of horror stories. It's still, I mean, in our time, there's a presence of the jinn in the Middle East. There's so many people that believe that they're an actual real thing. It's pretty scary. I've read a lot of stories about it. Some of the things my family shared about their experiences.
So, I mean, using them in your, is it kind of hard in that sense to use them in your own book like this? Like, is it like the equivalent of like the parents being like, don't play Dungeons and Dragons, it's devil stuff, you know what I mean? Like,
I'm gonna be honest with you, not really.
okay,
I actually
good.
really enjoy. I honestly love and enjoy exploring like these concepts. It's really, I don't know. It's very interesting for me. I'm really mesmerized by it.
Well,
I understand that it might spook some people. Totally get it. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's a concept I enjoy exploring.
So after reading the first chapter and then kind of doing some research on what's jinn, I don't know, you know, like as far as like setting up something for a comic and for a story like you're doing, I think it's an excellent choice to use because like how you said there's not as much known about them, and everything that seems to be known about them is like a million different things. So it's like a very open source. Like,
Yeah.
okay. And I guess like, so this is the first chapter. What do you got as far as plans, as far as like, as moving on with the second? Is there going to be a second chapter release? Or are you going to try to just kind of put them all like together and make like, you know how they put manga out in like 10 chapter books? Are you going to
Yeah.
do most of them online? What's the next couple steps for Moonflower?
So the second chapter, I pretty much finished. All I have left is just some background art and to get it colored, along with some dialogue.
Yeah.
And I have the first 24 chapters like planned out ahead of time. So the goal is I want to do a monthly release, starting with chapter 1 being released online October 1st, which is actually Isla's birthday. I thought maybe I should just release it on her birthday for now. And for each release, they're going to be a month apart, and I'm also going to release a physical booklet on our website. I'm planning on releasing the website sometime this month. I'm just doing it chapter by chapter for now. And maybe I'll do a deluxe edition, kind of like a manga, where I have like the first 10 in one book. We'll see. We'll see where it goes from there.
That's exciting. Is there any, I mean, this is a lot. There's a lot into this, and like a lot into putting something out monthly, especially given a time crunch, you know. Is there any other projects that you are getting into art-wise around the scene or writing-wise around the scene?
I'll do commissions here and there.
Okay. Very cool.
Maybe dip my toe into, I would like to dip my toe into art activism. And yeah, I would like to explore some of that in the future, hopefully with the time crunch of the comic, see what I can do from there. But other than that, this is the only story that I'm really working on. I do have another short story in the back of my mind that I started working on last year around October, and I have completed writing, but it's like a prequel for Moonflower, and I don't see myself releasing that anytime soon.
Well, very cool.
Yeah.
October seems to be the month for you, Noor.
Yeah, I don't know. What is it about October? It's October, September, November, December. Those are like the months where I'm just like extremely inspired. It must be the weather. I think when it just gets cold, you don't really want to go outside. You just want to stay home and draw.
Fair, yeah. And at least in Ohio, we'll get plenty of it. Well,
yeah.
Awesome, Noor. Well, thanks for taking time to chat with me. I'm super excited, and I'm like, it's an incredible book, and it's an incredible amount of work, and everything looks really good, and like it's paced well, and I'm excited to read the next chapters as they come out.
Thank you. I'm really excited to show my work to everyone.
Beautiful.
It's a huge passion of mine, so I'm honored. Thank you for taking the time to interview me today.
You got it. As far as like people finding your work, it's just your website, right?
So what I'm going to do is I'm launching a website sometime this month, but for now, you can find my work on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, even though I have to update some TikToks. It's been a bit since I've been on TikTok. For some reason, that one I tend to fall in and out a lot.
Same.
But I'm the most active. Yeah, I'm the most active on Instagram.
Okay. And Webtoon?
I know Instagram and Webtoon, yes. And Moonflower 1 will be released on Webtoon October 1st. I'm currently in the process of transferring it from comic book format to mobile format, just scrolling up. So that's what I've been doing. And in regards to the comic Moonflower 1, I'm currently taking pre-orders on Instagram via Venmo or Cash App. I'm thinking probably for now I'm going to do like a little Instagram shop until I set up the website, and we'll see where we go from there. So if anyone's interested in a pre-order or just to check out my work, I'm the most active on my Instagram.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks, Nora. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time, Dave. I really appreciate it.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig At The Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.